History is full of rich connections to God and the great outdoors He created for us. I'm on a mission to fellowship with other fathers as we introduce our sons and daughters to the beauty and bounty of the world where we are blessed to walk with our Heavenly Father in His garden. My name is Jacob Whitley, and this is Fathers and the Great Outdoors. This episode is brought to you by GreatOutdoorsPodcast.com, where you can find a lot of fun merch, including custom-designed Christian-based apparel, the Genesis 27:3, Take Your Quiver and Your Bow and Go Hunt Me Some Venison, or He Leads Me Beside Still Waters, He Restores My Soul. It's a nice little fishing shirt. Be sure to check out GreatOutdoorsPodcast.com today. Welcome to Fathers in the Great Outdoors. Thank you for supporting this program. If you want to continue to follow us, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Today we have Jon Goodwin with us. He is the owner of Wild Game Freaks. How you doing?
Doing well. How you doing, Jacob?
I'm doing good. So just jumping into it, why don't we start from kind of your younger days and how you got started in the great outdoors?
Well, my younger days, I didn't spend tons of time in the great outdoors, if I'm honest. Grew up in town, and but my grandparents lived in the mountains in Pennsylvania. So every summer, we go down to the Poconos and spend a week or two in the mountains. My brother and I, that's where I learned to shoot. My grandpa always had a BB gun for us and thousands of BBs. So I learned gun safety from my grandfather there. They also had a dock on a private lake. So that's also where I learned to fish. They had a rowboat, a canoe, and other things. And we spent tons of time on the water, tons of time fishing, tons of time shooting the BB gun, tons of time hanging out in the woods. And then when I was about 11 or 12, my uncle, who lived with my grandparents, took my brother and I camping to a piece of property that he had and wanted to put some new posted signs up and different things. But he brought along a 22 and a 12 gauge shotgun. And he was clearing a little shooting range for my brother and I. And he pulled a shotgun out. He shoots this bush that was in the way of where our target was going to go, shoots it 3 times, puts 3 more shells in and does rapid fire from the hip. And then he hands me the shotgun. And I'm like this, 80-pound scrawny, and you wouldn't know I'm scrawny now, but scrawny 12-year-old. He hands me a 12 gauge shotgun, tells me it doesn't kick hard. And as you can imagine, I was a little traumatized. I shot it once. It hurt a lot, but my uncle was there and my brother was there. And so I shot it a second time and I just handed the gun back. And so that was my introduction to shooting a firearm. And my uncle and my brother made fun of me the rest of the time we were there. So, so that was kind of my introduction, at a young age. Thanks to my grandparents living in the woods and my uncle for traumatizing me. So
I feel like that could be going one of two ways, depending on the parent figure doing that. They're either trying to scare the kids to respect guns, or they don't know what's going to scare the kids, and that's the result.
Yeah. So that was, slightly traumatic, and had a nice bruise for a while, but that's all good.
I remember the first time I shot, I think it was just my dad's old shotgun. Oh, no. It was either that or it was a Mosin Nagant.
Okay. Yeah. That's got some kick to it.
Yeah. And so the reason I say it was one of those is because they both at one point in time, all that was on the back end was a metal plate.
Oh, yeah.
So there was nothing to cushion the blow that was just going to kick you right in the shoulder. It's very possible it happened with both.
Yeah.
I know
the Nagants kick pretty good, and they don't forgive you. Yeah. Steel on the end, and then just hard wood.
Yeah, pretty much. That's I ended up doing some upgrades on mine, but I got mine from my grandfather.
Okay.
And I added like an old Russian scope and things like that. The only thing that's not original is it's either 2 or 3 inch padding that I added to the back end.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I have one with no padding, so I don't really shoot it much. And then I've got a carbine. It's actually the It's the Chinese version. It's kind of a knockoff, but carbine, and that thing kicks like a mule because it's lighter.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're fun guns though. They're
Oh
fun
yeah,
guns.
absolutely.
So yeah.
It's one of my goals is to take it hunting at some point.
Hey, there you go. Well, yeah, you said it's your grandfather. It was your
Yeah, it was
grandfather's.
my
Oh
grandfather's.
yeah,
Yeah.
you got to do it. Got to do it. I've got an old 16 gauge that was my grandfather's. That yeah, one of these years I'm going to take it out. But I've never hunted with it. Well, I've shot squirrels with it. I take that back. But never deer hunted with it. He used to deer hunt with it. So
Yeah.
old Ithaca featherweight 16 gauge. So
Can you do with a 16? Because I know we're in the middle of turkey season. I don't know if
yeah,
you could use it for that.
you probably could. Although there's no choke on this gun. It's a smooth bore. I mean, there's probably some sort of load. I mean, you don't really see, at least I haven't seen a ton of 16 gauge ammo around,
Hmm.
truthfully. So that's a good question. I'd have to look into that. That would be fun. That would be
Yeah,
fun.
that's a good point. I think the only time I've seen 16 gauge ammo is at not my grandfather, my father-in-law's cabin in the middle of
Okay.
the desert. And just because he keeps a shotgun up there, the 16 gauge. I don't know. Other than that particular one, you know what? That actually might have been the shotgun that gave me a really bad bruise. Now that I think about it, um, yeah, I don't know. I think that was probably the only 16 gauge I've seen
Okay.
that I can recall, anyways.
Yeah.
Uh,
Nice.
um, so going, I guess moving forward in
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
was there anything in particular you dove into, either fishing, hunting?
Yeah. Well, when so, you know, not much. But then I turned 21 and let's see, it would have been December of something, and then I got married the following July. So I got married when I was 21 years old.
Hmm.
And it was hunting became a way for me to connect with my father-in-law, my brother-in-law, and my wife's grandfather.
Yeah.
So I started to I decided that first year we were married, I went to a hunter safety course. I had a 12 gauge Mossberg 500 that I actually traded a Ford Escort for.
Oh,
So I'd bought the car for $200, the year before, and then I traded it for the shotgun.
okay.
And so really that was kind of the thing that got me into the woods. Was I realized, I married a country girl, and the best way to connect with the men in her family was to to get into hunting. And so it really, it got me out there with my father-in-law. He shot the biggest buck of his life opening day, first day of gun season, first day I ever hunted. I laid my hands on a 10-point buck that my father-in-law shot. And I don't know, several weeks later I shot the tiniest deer you've probably ever seen.
Hmm.
And my wife's grandfather actually taught me how to field dress a deer. So again, it was just a way to connect with those guys. And now I probably hunt more than my father-in-law and brother-in-law combined. So
You got the bug late, so now you
oh
want it
yeah,
all.
oh, I got the bug, man. I got the bug. So
Yeah,
yes,
I
sir.
I understand that. I think. Let me think. I want to say it was maybe 28 was the first time I did big game.
Okay.
And I've almost felt, because I had kids prior to that. So I felt like
Yeah.
I've been playing the catch up game so that I can have the appropriate amount of knowledge to bring them up in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but raising three kids takes up a lot of my time. So it's hard to get out.
Oh, I understand that. We've got three of our own. So yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, when they're young, I mean, it's you know, I know guys that spend every spare minute in the woods, but your kids need a dad.
Mhm.
you know, they need a dad, and so yeah, it's just different. Some of the trips out in the woods when the kids were little, it was different. And usually they wiggled so much I never got anything, but I have some amazing memories with my kids in the woods, and you know, uh, but it was definitely a different type of hunting. And now, my middle child is my hunting buddy. So, and he's almost 19 years old. So,
Yeah. When did you start taking him out?
man, he was probably three or four, I would say. We bought a home in 2008 that was in the country. We're surrounded by woods, and so having access was great, and I didn't have to take him anywhere. We could just literally put on our boots and go for a walk. So
Hmm.
so that made all the difference in the world. It was easy, so to speak, to introduce him to the woods. So, but yeah, when he was probably about 4, I would take him up into a tree stand, and we would go trampsing around. And he didn't sit very still, and he wiggled all over the place. And we saw deer a few times, and usually they spotted us before I spotted them because of wiggly man, But probably around so we never really had a real great opportunity to get a deer together until he was, I think he was 11 years old. We went back into an area where there's a lot of thick pines, and we sat down on the ground, and out in front of us there's this little field. It's about 80 yards across, and you could see this other group of trees over there. And I told him, I said, Matthew, we're gonna hit the grunt tube. And I said, I want you to check the app on my phone. I said, because if a buck responds to it, he's gonna come in from downwind. I said, so I want you to show me where the wind's blowing to. And he pointed. He pointed to the corner of the field. He looked at my phone and he pointed. Well, so I grunted, and this was an amazing moment. A minute later, a buck came out. Where do you think it came from? Directly
Downwind.
where he pointed to.
Yeah.
So it literally walked straight to us, and as it's coming at us, I whisper at him, I was like, Matthew, I'm not going to shoot that buck. He said, it's too little. And he's like, why? You need to do it. You've never shot a deer when you've been with me, whatever. And so I made a decision in that moment. I said, all right, fine. The trophy today is the memory, right? The trophy today is the memory. And that deer, I kid you not, it came within 6 feet of us, and we were on the ground in pines, and it couldn't quite tell what we were. It walked right up to us, ended up snorting in our face, ran out, circled around, stopped broadside at 29 yards, and I shot it. And basically, he got hooked then.
Yeah.
And he videotaped the whole thing using my cell phone, shaking all over the place like a leaf because he had a deer in his face. But it was, so that was a super cool moment. But that was the first time I'd ever gotten a deer when I had kids with me. And the other kids didn't go out as much. My daughter would go out on occasion. My youngest wasn't really into that, as the blood and guts kind of freaked him out a little bit. So,
Yeah.
but but he's now he helps me cut deer up. So, but certainly my passion at the outdoors. I mean, I love fishing and stuff, but deer hunting is really where it's at for me. I absolutely love it. And like I said, my middle child has caught that bug as well. So it's been
Yeah.
fun. It's been fun.
Do you guys do any foul?
No, we do some skeet shooting and stuff. But I haven't really done much fowl hunting. I mean, I should. We are not that far from some world-class duck hunting, goose hunting. Iroquois Wildlife Refuge is, several thousand acres, and it's just we are in a travel corridor for a lot of ducks and geese and things. The problem is I've been invited out, and usually the best time to hunt them around us is like that last week in October, first week in November, which is also when the rut's kicking in for deer hunting. And
Right.
I just can't give up the rut.
Yeah.
so so I've been out, I don't know, once or twice is about it. And I really want to get into it, but more as a backup plan, that if I get a buck early, then I'll go out. But
Yeah.
I just love deer hunting too much.
That's what I told myself last year, and I didn't get to go duck hunting at all. So I'm gonna make an effort to try to split my time.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear it's my buddy of mine is just obsessed with it, loves it. He's like, there's nothing like it. It's so much fun, all this stuff. But you know, I don't know. I get a lot of deer, so I stick to what I think I'm good at it. I hope,
Hmm.
but so, but yeah. So one of these days, maybe I'll get into it. But for now, I'm just really enjoying getting out in the deer woods. So
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like out of all the three kids, only one is stuck with it.
yeah, one stuck with it. My daughter, who is my oldest, she's almost 21. She has gone out with me, um, and she's hunted. She's hunted, and but only a few times. I was going through some of our camo and stuff in the basement not that long ago, and I said, "Hey, do you want me to hang on to this?" She's like, "Yeah, I think I'll get back into it when I'm out of college." So we saw deer the first. We went out. She was 15, I think, when she first went out, and we saw deer, but just nothing. No chance of getting a shot. It was funny. The first time we went out, we were in a tree stand, and she's looking off to our left, and she says, "Somebody's over there." I was like, "What?" She's like, "Somebody's over there." And I said, "Well, this is posted. They shouldn't be over there. We're on Papa's land." So I stand up, I'm looking around, and all of a sudden a buck snorts at me.
Hmm.
When she said somebody was over there, she was referring to a deer
Yeah.
that was then standing behind a bush that I could kind of see a little bit. She could never make it out with the scope. I had her shooting a little 243, and but it was fun. It was good to get out with her. She loves the outdoors. I mean, she's more of my adventurer than my hunter. So she loves the outdoors. She's a distance runner. She loves to climb mountains. Um, loves to go out on the water, her kayak, and so certainly loves being outside. But yeah, hunting, mm, not as much. So, but
Yeah.
again, maybe in the future, we'll see. We'll see.
Even with the property being posted, have you ever freaked yourself out during the night when you're approaching a stand?
Yeah, I've definitely overshot stuff. Or I was coming out of the woods one night with my son, and there was a tree down, and I went to go around it, and kind of lost my heading in the dark.
Hmm.
And we're walking, 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 walking. I'm like, I should have hit the road.
Yeah.
So, you know, I had a compass on my phone, so I looked at that and I was like, oh, okay, I got to take a left. But yeah, not too much. I do remember years ago when I had to actually sit down in the woods and wait for the light to come up because I got so lost. And
Oh, yeah.
it was just one of those things where I'm wandering around, and then finally I realized I'm like, I'm lost. There's no way. It's only getting worse. So, probably scared all the deer away in the county, making noise. But yeah, so it does, it'll happen. But now, like, the area near me, I have access to, a lot of property right around me. And I walk to 90% of it. And so I've lived in the same place for 17 years. So I know most of that property like the back of my hand. So
Hmm.
now I'm pretty comfortable. I know where most things are, and I can get there pretty efficiently. So yeah. So lately I haven't gotten lost. So but I was in Illinois last fall, and again got off my line coming out of the woods on public land, and took me quite a bit longer to get out of the woods than I should have. But we made it. So
Yeah. It's always my concern about doing a evening hunt.
yeah. Yeah, I do well, and that's where I think having an app like Onyx
Hmm.
is well worth it. As long as your phone's charged. But to be able to kind of see what you're working with, I think is a beautiful thing. I love using technology for mapping out good places for stands or e-scouting or whatever. But it's certainly a great tool when you're on a piece of property you're not familiar with. And because I was in, like I said, I was in Illinois last year in Shawnee National Park, which is just thousands and thousands and thousands of acres, and I'd never been there before. All my scouting was digital. So I'm walking, and when I got there 4 days before the other guys I was going to hunt with got there. So I'm just hiking in blind based on maps. And it's intimidating. It really
Yeah.
is. Both going in the dark and coming out in the dark. Because I hunt as long as I can. So, but yeah, it's an intimidating thing. But I think, yeah, there's several good apps out there right now that really are helpful, and I think well worth the price. And that'll, because quite frankly, getting lost in the woods, you only got to do that once. So it's
Right.
so,
Yeah.
and and the app shows where all the property lines are. It shows what's public versus what's private. I mean, it really opens up a lot of doors to some good stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. I definitely want to keep a backup battery phone charger with you. I remember one time this last year, my phone died and it was so cold that I could feel my limbs stiffening. And I thought if I don't call it quits now, I'm gonna get stuck in this tree and I can't call anyone.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
ended up climbing down and it was a struggle actually to climb down. So I felt like it was done a moment too soon.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
definitely for all those hunters out there, bring a backup battery if you can.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I used to use a climber quite a bit too. It's a
Hmm.
little bit of work getting to the tree, and I dropped my phone several years back, and I was hunting with another guy, and he was texting me for an hour. I could see my phone glowing on the
Hmm.
ground. It would glow. I'm like, oh well, someone's texting me. Whatever. Well, it's my buddy Greg texting, asking me if sorry, someone just waved in my office door, asking me if I'm okay, and I never respond. And so I kind of ruined his hunt. He ended up trucking over trying to find me to make sure I hadn't fallen out of a tree. And I was just sitting up there like, why are you ruining my hunt walking over here? But yeah, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, you
So
didn't take Mike Rowe's advice of safety last.
no, no. No. So
So how's your kid's relationship with God?
I'd say pretty good. I'm very blessed. I'm very blessed. My oldest is pretty serious about her faith. When she's home, she heads up. She reads her Bible every night. I know she's got a church she's a regular attender of. She's a college athlete at a Christian school. Recently, they had an event, and she was the one that they asked to do their devotional.
Hmm,
So it's really been cool. Like she's really stepped into a leadership role at her school, but I've kind of watched her blossom in her faith with that as well. And then my middle child, he's 18 years old, but he really wants to be, one of his goals in the future. He wants to be on the deacon board at the church, because he just wants to
interesting.
serve.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he works with his hands, so
Yes.
he's like, I want to take care of this facility. And so typically when he's home, he's doing a project in our church. Even he's away at college now. And he's got a church again that he's really involved. Well, I say really involved. He's got a church that he attends. He has a hard time being really involved as he's just busy again, college student, college athlete. So, um, so I'd say he's got a pretty good heart for the Lord. Also, he's got a servant's heart. And my youngest, um, he's really involved in youth group, really involved in church. And I say really involved in church. I mean, I'm a pastor. So that's what does that mean? It does my heart good that, again, my older two kids love church. They're at churches when they're not here. And both of them have talked to me. They're like, hey, when we're home from church or when we're home from school in the summer, we want, is there going to be a church membership class? Because we both want to join the church, so So I think to me, like and my wife, like it really does our hearts good that we see, our kids want to be involved in church. They want to serve. They want to um treat people right, as salt and light, and certainly there's struggles there. I mean, they're young, right? But I can see in all of my kids a heart for the Lord. My youngest like doesn't want to ever miss youth group, loves it,
Mm, that's
and
good.
it wasn't uncommon when my middle kid was home that he would ask me questions about the sermon afterwards, or say, hey, I really, he would want to interact with the stuff. So I really, I'm blessed. I guess that's the best way to put it. My wife and
Yeah.
I feel extremely blessed because, we also know a lot of pastors' kids that are very much against church, and I think
Hmm.
finding that balance of, we have certainly had a number of trials in ministry life. I've been a pastor in different capacities for about 21 years. And so to know that my children still love church, even though there have been painful experiences, I'm not going to lie, but part of what we have chosen to do is we don't ever speak poorly about our church. We don't speak poorly about people in our church. We only speak highly. And um, while it may not be 100% realistic all the time, we did not want to taint our children's view of the church. If they experience something that's hard, we'll deal with that, but they don't need to know about some of the messy stuff that, we've had to walk through. I mean, because life is messy
Yeah.
and church life can be messy. But so we really made a conscious effort to kind of shield some of that stuff from our kids. They need to figure that out on their own. And I think I've also really worked hard to let them know that their mother and they are the most important thing in my life. Um, outside of God, obviously, but church is not a mistress, as it is in a lot of pastors' homes. So my day off's my day off, and they get me. Um, my my board knows that if there's a meeting scheduled in a kid's sporting event or a kid's concert, we need to move the meeting. Because again, nobody, as a dad, nobody else is going to protect my kids but me. So even though the meeting at church is important, it's not as important as my kids. And I know that's not a view that everyone takes, but that's kind of how I've chosen to live my life. And at times, there are people that may disagree with me, but I'm okay with that because I think it's more important that my kids know that I love them, that I'm focused on them. Certainly, they know there's nights where I'm out, I'm at meetings, I'm doing funerals or weddings or whatever, but they know, in the hierarchy, it's the Lord, it's my wife, it's my kids. And I think that's important. I think
Yeah.
that's very important.
Absolutely. Is when it comes to kind of the combination of the outdoors and their faith, is there uh, kind of a bridge for them? Do you see them using their faith in the outdoors?
Um, hmm, that's a good question. I think I know there's a deep appreciation in my family for the beauty of the outdoors and creation. Uh, we spend multiple weeks in the summer camping in the mountains every year. That's the favorite part of my kids' year. Um, that's a good question though. I mean, I think certainly for myself, um, but I don't know. I mean, my son, who's really into hunting, it really doesn't have any time to hunt right now because of college.
Yeah.
So, but we have certainly spent a lot of time together, and I can tell you when we walked up on a buck he shot a couple of years ago, the first words out of his mouth were "Thank you, Lord." so, so I, and to me, that's an overflow of the heart, right?
Yeah.
So, first response for a lot of us is shakes and the party that happens, I've definitely seen that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really know where the intersection is there, if I'm honest. More than just a appreciation of the beauty. My middle kid's he's into, loves photography with nature, loves to fish. Again, my oldest is big into climbing mountains. She's perfectly content with just seeing a sunset. Uh, you know, uh, the Northern Lights were out, I don't know, a few months ago, and she's texting us pictures. She was out in the middle of the night just watching, and so there's a love for that. Um, and I think a reminder of God's goodness as they interact with that. But yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
What about in the times that you shared in a stand? Did you find um, it kind of an intimate moment where they would open up about things in life, maybe things they were struggling with, or things they wouldn't normally talk about?
I don't know I don't know in the stand, for me, where that happens, with the boys in particular, is standing in the garage when we're cutting up a deer.
Hmm.
It's just because it's just this natural flow, right, of life, because that's kind of been part of our mode as a family. I mean, I have a nice little butcher area in my garage. I shoot, a good amount of deer. I mean, last year I got 8 deer. Um, but 5 or 6 is certainly the normal or the low end. And so there's a lot of time out there just hanging out with the guys, so to speak, hanging out with my boys, talking about life. And I try, or, my son Matthew and I have been on a few hunting trips. We've gone to West Virginia and bear hunted together. And again, that's hours in the car, you know, and then we're sleeping in a tent and we're eating dinner off a tailgate of a truck, and so yeah, in those moments, it's it's everything. It's not just the hunt. It's talking about future hopes and dreams and girls and whatever, and so I think it's really the beauty of God's creation when you interact with it, I think, is a disarming thing, right? And it's and especially when you find that common love, whatever it is, fishing. My son Matthew and I enjoy fishing together too. Uh, there's just kind of this natural outflow, I think, and again, there's conversations that happen, when you're there, certainly that wouldn't happen anywhere else. It's kind of like, I mean, sitting around a campfire. It's this safe place where you're just, maybe you're telling stories or you're talking about stuff. Last summer, with family, I just, sitting around a campfire and we were camping, I had some spiritual conversations at depths with people that I'd never had those conversations with before, and so you see that kind of stuff, certainly, I think, with the outdoors, and I've seen it in my relationship with my kids. But like I said, at the cutting table in the garage, that seems to be the spot. So, um, but but yeah, it's a beautiful thing, unless I'm cutting my fingers. So,
Oh yeah, I don't think I've ever sliced a finger, but I have poked myself by accident.
yeah, yeah, I've had stitches a couple times, and that involved deer.
Yeah,
But I still have all my fingers, so we're good. We're
I
good.
think the ones that always freak me out is like if I accidentally pierced an organ and then I poked myself with the same knife. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to inject myself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's
um,
funny. Yeah, several years ago, I was at my in-laws' house, and I had already shot a deer a couple days before at my house, but first thing in the morning, I shoot a doe, and I watch it pile up. And my brother-in-law, why he was yelling in the woods, I don't know. He yells down, "Hey, did you?" He's up on top of a hill. I'm down in the swamp area. He goes, "Did you get it?" I said, "Yeah. You want one?" There's another deer right there, and this deer never left. Right, so I shoot this doe, the second one, and watched it pile up. Well, my father-in-law and brother-in-law come over eventually, and I said, "Yeah, you can have the second deer." I said, "But you got to gut it." Well, I go over to take care of my deer, and I promptly slice my thumb open with my father-in-law standing there, and he's like, "You got to go up to the house and take care of that." And I was like, "All right." So by the time I get back out of the woods, uh, I'd shot 2 deer that morning. Both were taken care of. So it actually worked out well. I mean, yeah, I had a
Hmm.
slice, but you know, they did all the hard work. So I did the fun part. So
Yeah.
worked out good. Worked
I'm
out
sure
good.
that's not a recommended method though.
But yeah, I wouldn't really recommend it. I still have a scar on my thumb from that. So
Oof.
yeah, it was a darn good slice. Probably should have had it stitched up, but you know, yeah, it's all good. A little deer blood in there. We're good.
Yeah.
But
Were you going too fast, do you think?
I don't even remember how I did it, to be honest. So it's quite possible the knife wasn't sharp enough. I think sharper the
Oh yeah.
better in my opinion, because you're making clean slices rather than fighting with it.
Yeah.
So I think that may have been the issue, is I was fighting instead of slicing. So
I'm blanking on the name of the one I use, but it's got like little sleeves for replaceable blades,
yeah,
so it's
yeah.
always sharp.
Yeah, I have one. I use a company called Weeby that I use. I know Outdoor Edge has them as well.
Hmm.
There's a couple different companies, but yeah, Weeby has graciously allowed me to use a number of their products and test them out, and I love them. But yeah,
Yeah.
always sharp. I mean, that's dull. And my dad used to always tell me that, a dull knife is more dangerous than a sharp knife, and
Yeah.
I 100% agree with it. So
The main one I use for like once I get to the actual meat part is actually a Cutco, and they're very proud of how they keep their knives sharp.
yeah. Yeah, I use from start to finish, as far as once I get past the field dressing and skinning a deer, cutting it up, I use just a good sharp fillet knife. I've always done that. I always have a good sharp fillet knife, and I find it works really well for skinning deer. It works really well for cutting them up, and so that's kind of always been my go-to.
Mm.
I'm happy if I just have one good fillet knife and a sharpener handy. I'm good to go. So, but
Do you do anything special to like get hair off of it and things like that, or do you just use a rag?
well, if you do it, you can do a deer and almost get no hair on it. So I don't typically do anything. I think the biggest thing for me, I think, is how you skin it.
Hmm.
If you skin it when it's warm, it'll peel right off. It's the
Sure. I'm thinking of more
easy.
like the initial cuts. Like if
The
you were
initial,
just,
yeah, the initial cuts. I don't typically get much meat or out of that area anyway. So, yeah, I don't usually get much hair. I mean, sometimes I'll trim around the edge of that, because it depends on the deer. I mean, it depends how cold it is. I mean, we're up north, so some deer may hang several days. Some need to be cut up that day. Really
yeah.
depends on what I'm doing. But I think the biggest thing for me is, I cut them. They hang from the back legs, and I start cut around there. Slice up each inside of the legs
Hmm.
and cut around the top, and just pull everything down. And then what you're pulling down on top of already has hair on it, if that makes sense. So I let the hide kind of protect the deer, if that makes
Oh,
sense.
sure. I meant more like
Uh,
the getting like hair, like the initial cuts on getting the hair on the knife, not the
yeah.
meat.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, yeah, usually the knife I use to gut the deer is usually a different knife than I use to cut the deer up.
Oh, okay.
So
I
yeah,
gotcha.
I'll use something with a just a short 3-4 inch blade.
Hmm.
Again, nice and slice it down the center, go around the rear end, the fun part there. And then you get that cut off. He'll reach inside and slice the windpipe, and then everything comes out at once.
Okay,
So
I gotcha. I
yeah.
thought you were saying you did the entire process with the
Oh
same
no
knife.
no
That's why I was
no no no
curious.
no no. Just the skinning and the processing. I'll use a fillet knife, but yeah, for the field dressing, I'll use one of those with a replaceable blade. Little one of those weeby knives, and they're just to make those initial cuts.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I guess I lied. I used to.
Well, now I understand. No,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I get what you mean now.
yeah. No, it's all good. It's all good.
Um, so we've touched on this a little bit, but where would you
Yeah.
say you see God in the great outdoors?
Where do I see God in the great outdoors?
Yes.
I think I see him everywhere in the great outdoors. I mean, it's to me, it's one of those places where I can go and I just feel his presence. And it's one of those things like I live I mean, life can be kind of hectic, if I'm honest. And I've got my hands in a lot of different things, with church, with the community, with other side projects and boards I serve on. And there's something to me about being out in God's creation that it's just peaceful. Um, and I've also found that it is a common denominator that I can use to share my faith with other people. I love to paint parallels between things that have happened in the field and truths that you find in scripture. And I've done that at some game dinners and different things I've spoke at because I find that it's just such a beautiful um connection there. But also when you can find an area of life that you love, if you can share a shared love with somebody else, a lot of times it can turn into an opportunity to share other shared loves. So, the example of just loving the outdoors has opened the door for me to share the gospel with many people. And because, again, we're able to connect on that level of, man, I love the outdoors. I love the creation. I love the pursuit of the white-tailed deer. I think the white-tailed deer is one of the most beautiful creations that God has made, in my humble opinion. And because I have that connection with so many people, and I have a very large platform where I'm able to connect with people on social media and then podcasting and different things, it turns into an opportunity to go beyond talking hunting, like because there's more to me than just hunting. And I've been a successful hunter. I kill a lot of deer. I kill big deer. I absolutely love it. But the truth is, that's a creation made by our Creator. That's so much bigger, so much higher. And I don't worship the deer; I worship Him. So
Mhm.
again, it has opened the door for me again to share the gospel. And I would encourage your listeners to do that. I think God imprints on us things about His creation that we fall in love with, but we have to remember those are also tools to bring His name glory. Right? He created all of this essentially to show off how great He is. Right? The heavens themselves declare the glory of God. Scriptures tell us, but when He created animals, what did He say? It is good. He created the mountains. It is good. The waters. It is good. And they are all to reflect upon His goodness. And so I think it's really for me, just given me so many opportunities to share how amazing our God is. It's also, again, it's given me a platform to share how amazing our God is. And even the podcast I'm involved in, that we can sit there and we can spend a half hour talking about the outdoors or the outdoor industry or whatever. And then we can shift gears and say, hey, but tell us about your faith, because we know that's not what you're all about. And it's amazing how many people will then be open to the gospel because we've hit that connection point.
Right.
So I think that's so important. Whether you're a hunter or a fisherman or a car guy or whatever it is, that thing that God has uniquely crafted you to maybe be good at or be knowledgeable about, or to just enjoy, like, God can also use that love as a tool to share the gospel with other people who are like minded. And I've really seen that, and it's been such a blessing for me. And I've connected with people because of hunting, and then in turn I've connected with them at a deeper level because of my faith. And it really is a blessing to see. So I'm just so thankful, and constantly looking, I think, also, when I'm in the outdoors, trying to be mindful to thank the Lord for what I see,
Mm.
because it's all about Him. And then I try to ask myself whenever I leave the woods, all right, what did I learn today? And it's and there's always something. There's always something, and so yeah, it's enhanced my spiritual walk, in that it's given me opportunities to share my faith, but it's also enhanced my spiritual walk because I'm constantly just taking it in and thanking God for all that He's done, because it's a gift to us to bring His name glory. So I'm just, yeah, I'm so thankful, so
Yeah,
thankful.
that's awesome.
So yeah,
So you mentioned the podcast you're on. That's
yes,
the Christian Outdoors podcast.
yeah, Christian Outdoors Podcast. Yep, yep. So I've worked with Pete for several years behind the scenes, doing some social media for him and different things. And I've probably, I was a guest on his show, I think, more than anybody else. So I couldn't even tell you how many times I was a guest on his
Hmm.
show. The first time I did it, it was I was talking about a bear hunt that I went on with my son. That was basically his 16th. I want to say, I think we went because it was his 16th birthday. It was basically his gift. It was a bear hunt that he and I went on. And then kind of from that, Pete and I had connected just because of social media. I followed his page, he followed mine, and we interacted a little bit on there. And he discovered that I was not only did I love to hunt, but I was a pastor, am a pastor. And it kind of just grew from there. It went from, I would do hunting episodes to where, myself and another gentleman, Chris, would on occasion do shows that had nothing to do with hunting at all. We would do shows that were strictly spiritual, whether it be, around Christmas time or around Easter. We typically would be called on to do those. And then it kind of grew from there. And, you know, I would be a guest on occasion. And then basically starting this year, I've started co-hosting with Pete, and I've co-hosted probably 90%, 80% of the shows this calendar year. And on Wednesdays, I do a devotional as well. So we call devotions with Christian Outdoors, and it's 12 minutes, 15 minutes. This week got a little long; it was 19.
Hmm.
But yeah, every Wednesday we drop a mini bonus episode where I just essentially am sharing the word and sharing a biblical truth. So sometimes I'll mention the outdoors, most times I don't. And it's just, again, trying to take that show and just give it another added layer of where we can bring people closer to Jesus. I mean, which is, why we do it. I mean, the whole um, purpose behind the show is to talk all things outdoors and to enjoy God every day. So we do that on the weekly shows that drop on Mondays, and then again on Wednesdays. Really, it's a 100% spiritual focused emphasis of just trying to help people get deeper in their faith. And I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. It's different doing a show like that because I'm by myself, and I'm getting a little preachy.
Hmm.
Normally, when I'm getting preachy, I have hit my microphone. I've got people sitting in chairs in the sanctuary, but so it's a little different. But
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed it. There's been some pretty good feedback, and there's people in my life even that are listening to it that have texted me, and they've shared that it's been an encouragement to them, and so it's really been good. I've got some folks in my church that are engaging with that, so I'm like, hey, if that's another avenue that uh, they can use to get closer to Jesus, I'm like, hey, it's a win. I don't really care what method they use, man. I just want them walking with Christ. So
Yeah.
it's been good. And again, I have a lot of friends that don't know the Lord that love to hunt. So I've kind of introduced Christian outdoors to them and let them know that I'm involved in that as well. So again, it's kind of an easy avenue to share that, and it's been a lot of fun because and Pete's a great dude. So
Yeah.
he's a great friend, a really good friend of mine. We speak several times a week, and it's really just been a joy to connect with him, with other believers around the country, and a lot of folks in the outdoor industry. So it's really been great because I've dabbled in the outdoor world for many years and really wrestled with what does it look like. So I have an Instagram page that's has almost 80,000 followers. It's got a few million interactions every month. I mean, it's mind-boggling numbers to me, and I've really wrestled with what does that look like. I don't want to get preachy, but I also want my faith to be seen.
Mhm.
So now I've been integrating the Christian Outdoors podcast stuff onto that page, and it's again just as a means to say, hey, I have this huge audience. You've enjoyed all my videos and pictures and whatever. Now, hey, here's another added layer, and the most important layer,
Yeah.
Jesus. So
Exactly.
yeah, so it's been good. It's been really good.
Very cool. What so one of your stories earlier, you said mentioned your son recorded the
Yeah,
deer as he
yeah.
approached. Was that kind of the start of creating media for your platform?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it was certainly was fun. I never really did anything with that video or with those videos. I still have them on my phone today, like but I've created some reels and things recently that are out there. But no, I think for me, the social media side was just a unique opportunity to connect with other hunters. Um, I've kind of been a solo act, so to speak, as far as hunting most of my life. Um, well, I say most of my life. I mean, it started till I was an adult, but I hunt with my father-in-law and stuff, my brother-in-law. That's only over Thanksgiving. I do have another friend that I hunt with maybe a week out of the year, but 90% of the time I'm alone. Spent a lot of time in the woods by myself. Obviously brought my kids out there as well, but most of the time when I hunt, it's just me. And so to me, it was more of, okay, how do I connect with other hunters? But I also wanted to create something that was safe that I could look at next to my kids. There's a lot of pages where I don't. There's no cursing. There's no girly pictures. There's no um, overly super bloody, violent pictures with animals either. I trying to so I'm really trying to bring a family friendly, respectful um, page that I wouldn't be ashamed of if my kids were looking at it. And I think a lot of
Right.
this there's a lot of garbage out there. So, and then I spent a lot of the time really policing even language. Like, if you're commenting and saying stuff, nope, delete. Like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. I don't know. So it's really, I've created a lot of humor, a lot of reels, a lot of videos. I videotape all my hunts. But really more just I've used it as a means to as a connection point. And it's and when I have new followers and stuff and I see they have Bible verses and whatever in their profile, oftentimes I'll send them a private message and be like, hey, I noticed, this. I said and then I'll send them a message. I just love to connect with people who love the outdoors and love the Lord as much as I do. So I try to look for those things as ways. And there are times when it turns into, younger hunters are reaching out to me for advice, or there's a number of pastors that I write back and forth to that I've met because of Instagram. And, I met Pete Rogers on Instagram. I've met, there's a number of companies that I interact with and use their products that have been doors opened because of that. And
Hmm.
so really it's been more for me. Again, number one, I want to have a clean, safe environment, but two, I'm a relational person. And it was kind of an outlet for me as well as I recognize as a pastor, I'm not going to stand up in the pulpit and tell hunting stories every Sunday. You know, people don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
so I also wanted an outlet for me, if I'm honest, right? And it kind of became that, and in turn, it's turned into ministry opportunities as well. Like I said, I've spoken at game dinners, I've hosted game dinners, I've been involved in organizing outdoor events, and now doing the Christian Outdoors podcast and other things. It's really, it's really been interesting because it's opened a ton of doors. And really for a while, like I said before, I really wrestled with, okay, how do I take this and really make it more about the Lord rather than just about fun? And really the last few years I've really been able to do that. So that it's, I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with good, clean fun, but at some point, I think as a child of God, as an ambassador of Christ, I think at some point, God didn't just give me a page that was fun. I now have a platform with a lot of eyeballs. So, I think there's a responsibility that comes with that, uh, to share Jesus. And so it's really, really, I've really been able to do that. So it's been good. It's been
Yeah.
good.
That's awesome. You mentioned fishing with Matthew.
Yeah.
How did that get started?
He's always enjoyed it. Again, we go camping up in the mountains every year. Got a lake right down the road. We spent a lot of time out there, a couple weeks. So we'll, I'm not gonna say I'm the best angler. I'm not gonna pretend I am. But I enjoy it. I enjoy it. And he's always loved it since he was little. We had the little we had a little Spider-Man fishing rod. For him when he was little, and we'd go fishing. And I remember we had this one campground we went to when he was little, and he would spend all day fishing. And then was scared to get the fish off of the rod because they were slimy, and didn't want to put the worm on the rod. And so my daughter would do the worm for him. She's
Hmm.
always been the one that's not afraid of mud and slimy stuff, more than the boys. But he was probably 4 or 5 years old, standing there on the bank just catching fish. Usually they were little, but he absolutely loved it. And now we quite often when he's home, there's a pond near us that we'll go to and do bass fishing in together. And one of our traditions as well is in the summertime, his birthday's in July, we will get up early, 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 and we'll go fishing in the morning. And the last couple of years have really been pretty good times out on the lake. And God's blessed us with beautiful days, with beautiful sunrise, and also loon encounters have happened.
Yeah.
The last 2 years, they've come up right under my son's kayak. It's pretty amazing.
Oh
That's
yeah.
happened two years in a row. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's just something we just love to do together. I'm sure when he's home this summer, we'll get out a few times. I mean, he's still, he's found a few places near his college that he fishes at and stuff. But yeah, he just loves it. It's I think therapeutic for him. He's also got some buddies. They get together and they kayak fish together, and just love it. But yeah, he started, like I said, loved it at a young age, and hasn't looked back. He just, it's been good. So, just but we again, we live in a country, and we've raised our kids to be outside. I mean, we our children, if they wanted to watch TV, they had to ask permission. If they wanted to play video games, they ask permission, and there's usually a timeline attached to that. So, go outside, get dirty, and so they've kind of learned to do that. So, but he still, like I said, he still loves to hunt, loves to fish, and started at a pretty young age. So,
That's a lot of fun.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so going kind of a little deeper, what would you say that you think is the significance and importance of a father's role in teaching their kids about God and Christ?
Mm. I think it's the utmost importance. I think a lot of dads, probably myself included at times, I get very distracted about all sorts of stuff, right? Life is busy, work is important, um, hobbies become idols. Um, but at the end of the day, none of that stuff's going to matter, right? I mean, the truth is, most guys, if they kick the bucket, uh, within 2 weeks, they're going to hire their replacement. Life goes on. So I think, the first thing is, I think, as dads, we need to model consistency in our own homes before our kids. Our kids, yeah, it's important that we tell them about Jesus. It's important that we tell them to love their neighbor. It's important that we tell them to be a servant. It's important that we tell them that God loves them, and that our goal, our job is to bring glory to him in all that we do. But more importantly than that, it's important that they see an example worthy of being followed. Kids are pretty darn perceptive. And if they see it's not real, chances are we're going to be labeled a hypocrite, and they're not going to want what we preach. So I feel very, very strongly in that my children need to see, um, not just me preaching about Jesus, they need to see me living like Jesus. Because more, in my opinion, more is caught than is taught. And same with the outdoor world. Um, the best way to become a good hunter is to spend as much time in the outdoors as you can. The best way to become a follower of Jesus is to spend as much time with Jesus as you can. And when my kids see me pursuing Jesus, um, that's going to have an impact, because I think, and again, in my household, my children have all attended the churches where I've served, and they've heard me preach about Jesus a whole lot. But then they get to go home with me, and they see how I talk to their mother, and they hear how I talk to them, and they see the habits that I have, and they see how I treat a waitress. They see if I read my Bible or just tell people to read theirs.
Mm.
And so I think, for me, um, it's so important that I model what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus, uh, because, like I said, I think more is caught than taught. And at the end of the day, does anything else matter? I mean, if I leave my kids with $1 million and they don't have a heart for Jesus, what profits? Right? What? How does it profit a man if he gains the whole world but he loses his soul? That was in a good book I read once. So at the end of the day, do I want my kids to be good hunters? I mean, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I would love that. Do I want them to be good anglers? Yeah, that'd be great. But at the end of the day, I want my kids to love Jesus, because that's the only thing that makes a lasting impact. My deer mounts, they're all going to burn someday, you know, but the lives that have been affected by the gospel, um, those are the true treasures. Those are the things that are so much more important. And my with my children, um, there's a lot of things I don't care about, if I'm honest. Like, there's stuff I'm not going to worry about. But man, I pray a lot about their spiritual condition. They don't have to be the smartest person, they don't have to be the most talented person. But my prayer is that they love Jesus like nobody else. And I want them to also have a walk that is theirs, not mine. I don't know how long you've been in the church world, but I've been in it enough that I can fake it pretty good if I want to.
Sure.
Um, I know all the churchy words. I have all the churchy books. I have a pretty good vocabulary. I can share all the church stuff. I can tell you what you think you need to hear, but at the end of the day, that's not what we pass on to our kids, man. I want them to have a robust relationship with Christ, in that, because in that there's a security that their dad can't give them. I'm not going to be here forever, but to know that they are safe and secure in the arms of Jesus is a powerful thing. To know that on those dark days, they can reflect on the good things that God has done in the past and know that they serve a God who's the same yesterday and today and forever, brings a peace that is just unexplainable. I want them to have that. When days are hard, I want them to be able to say, I have hope because I know my king is still on the throne. Like, there's just so much, right, wrapped up in all of that. And again, I mean, do I want my kids to be successful? Yeah. But how do we measure success? I man, I just pray it is the top of my prayer list that my kids would walk with Jesus. So yeah, so how important is it, or how did you frame that? I don't remember, but but it is the most important thing in my life. I
Yeah.
The most important thing. I mean, and we could debate all sorts of secondary issues, but man, I want my kids to walk with Jesus, which means I need to teach them how to do that. Not just in the words I say, but they need to see it.
Right.
They need to see it in my life. They need to see it in my wife's life. So, yeah.
One of the podcasts that I recently did, the gentleman said, you can't bring anything with you to heaven except your kids.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was kind of his answer to that question.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. No, it's true.
It's very
It's
important.
good. It's good. It's good.
Um, so on the hunting side, is there anything other than deer you're interested in eventually doing?
I've done some bear hunting. Uh, I've got a black bear mount in my house. Actually, there's a few of them. My son's got some. Um, Small game. I've done a decent amount. Got a lot of squirrels, a lot
All
of
mounted?
coon. No, no, no. Got a lot of raccoons. More because they're pests. I've gotten rabbits. But yeah, big game. I mean, the one I would love to pursue is an elk. I would love to elk hunt. And so one of these
Yeah,
days. And I've got a few friends down south too that I keep talking about hog hunting. Not that hog hunting it's to me it's just something I've never been able to hunt because I don't have them here. So,
right.
anything I haven't got, I'd like to get. But certainly elk's at the top of the list. Um, mule deer would probably be a close second to that. I mean, I've gotten some nice big white-tailed deer. But yeah, definitely elk, mule deer. Um, that's definitely at the top. If I could go out west and get an antelope, I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
I have a good friend. He shoots a moose every year. Lives in the Yukon. He's a missionary, and I would love to get a moose, but again, it's not at the top of my list. I'd be probably just as content to go on a hunt with him and videotape it. Um, but uh, but certainly, if I had the chance, I mean, that'd be something. But yeah, definitely an elk is the top. It's the top of the list for me right now. So we'll see if
Yeah.
I can make that happen.
That's a very common answer. That the
Yeah,
elk and mule deer, I think, are probably
yeah,
the two highest
yeah,
stated. I have heard that moose is pretty tasty.
yeah. My buddy Derek, he loved that. That's basically all they eat as far as red meat goes. I mean,
Hmm.
there's a lot of meat on a moose, so
Yeah.
you get a moose, you're good for a bit. So yeah, but he loves it. And I think it was the other day. He said it's probably the closest. I believe how he worded it. It's one of the closest wild game meats to like beef. He said, he would rather have moose over beef, which I would say I'd rather have venison over beef personally myself. But
Right.
so, but yeah, I've heard it's very very good. So I got to get one, I guess, so I can test that theory. See if it really is. So
Just join someone on their hunt and
yeah,
I'm sure they'll share.
yeah, there you go, there you go. Well, and I know where he is. Their hunting parties, they typically will split the animals up because you know, uh, for a while he was up in this remote fly-in type of village where he planted a church up there in the Yukon, and yeah, you get a moose, it's a big deal, not just for you, but for the village.
Hmm.
Feeds a lot of people. So yeah, they share, which really made me feel guilty because like if you came over and asked me for a backstrap for one of my deer, I'd probably tell you no. I want to keep myself.
Yeah. Well, it depends on where you get the deer from.
Yeah.
Because like the deer that I hunt in I guess that'd be like central North Carolina. Um, they're pretty small. I one shelf in my stand-up freezer holds one single deer, and I still got room.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
I could tag out and not even fill my freezer.
Yeah. So you're not, yeah, well, and I got a deer a couple years ago. He weighed his live weight, I think was like 265. So, slightly bigger than the southern deer.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I have a buddy from Florida. He was on a nice lease in Georgia, and then he could hunt in Florida. But he would come up here every year. I mean, he's like the deer down there are so small compared to So. But I hunted Georgia once, uh, years ago. Well, 6 7 years ago maybe, and the only deer I saw was in the dark, so
Hmm.
so I couldn't tell you how big they were, but Yeah, I do know up here they are quite a bit bigger,
Yeah.
but they
I
need
see most of them with my headlights in a field at night.
yeah.
They like to move around at night down here.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they don't want to move in that heat, huh?
Yeah, that's probably what it is. Yeah. All right. Well, what's for my last question, what's your favorite Bible verse?
Favorite Bible verse, Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 through 30. Jesus says these words. He says, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest for your souls." And I think just that reminder up to myself, right, that
Mhm.
there are days when, man, I'm just tired. I've lost sight of what's important. He says, "Hey, come to me, all who are weak, all who are weary," and but also I think it serves as an invitation to everybody. You know, there's a lot of people searching for truth. They're searching in the wrong places. Jesus also was saying to them too, man, come to me, all who are weak, all who are weary. You want to find rest? You don't have to look any further than Jesus. So
Yeah,
it's a good verse. Good
that is
verse.
a good one. That's a good one too when you're feeling worn out and need to be
Oh yeah.
reminded that everything's okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And there's plenty of those days.
Yeah.
Plenty of those
Lots
days.
and lots.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was pretty much everything I had to ask. Was there anything you were hoping to discuss?
No, I think it was good, man. I appreciate it. I'm glad we could finally get it done. We've kind of been our calendars haven't been lining up. So it was good. It was
Yeah,
good. Glad we could do it. Glad we could do it. So I
absolutely.
appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on. This has been
Yeah,
fun.
you're welcome. Yeah. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in on greatoutdoorspodcast.com. And if you happen to be listening or watching on one of our social media platforms, you should check out greatoutdoorspodcast.com for some cool merch like this hat or this awesome coffee cup for camping. And this awesome sweater as well, which features our classic Genesis 27:3. Take your quiver and your bow and go hunt me some venison. Your wife's gonna love the way you look in this. Right, honey?
Uh-huh.
Greatoutdoorspodcast.com.
Why?